Yeah, boom, boom, boom. Open up. It is the Sixers Talk podcast brought to you by Wilmington University. WilmU Works. Good to see you. Danny Pommells, along with the smartest man in the room, Noah Levick. We got Ben Berry, our producer extraordinaire, in the cut like a Band-Aid, as well as Tom Finer, gracing our presence here at Rivers Casino. What is up? Good to see you. It's been a little minute. We are still excited and pumped up about what we're expecting the Sixers to do this upcoming season, and just happy to be doing this podcast. It's cathartic. It's fun. We get to break down and get to little points and nuances we maybe not be able to get to in our regular everyday stuff. Summer is almost over. It could be over depending on who you talk to, because we're after Labor Day here. But we're lucky enough here at Comcast to have the Rita's Water Ice truck dropping by our office tomorrow, I think. And which got me thinking, you have a favorite water ice flavor?
I think mango would probably be my number one. I don't think so.
Oh, we haven't? Okay. Mango?
Mango's number one. I think you can't go wrong with lemon. I do have a Rita's right down the street from me in Havertown, so you can't go wrong with Rita's. It's always good stuff. Yeah.
It is.
How about for you?
You know what? I'm a rainbow guy, which is more of a local flavor that you can get at your little mom and pop place rather than at Rita's. If I go to Rita's, I got to get a cherry gelati. That is a win. I don't like the price of said gelati these days because inflation and price indexing and all that stuff has changed the way things used to be. It used to be more of a, $1 or $2 type of investment, but nowadays I think $1 or $2 is just going to get you a pretzel. You won't even be able to get a water ice, but
get a lick of water ice.
Yeah. Right. But nonetheless, we soldier on here on the Sixers Talk podcast. A lot going on. Are we happy, sad, excited to have Danny Green back? What do we make of that? I mean, we got Patrick Beverley, who's in his mid-30s, bringing Danny Green, who's only played 11 games on his way back from ACL, LCL surgery. So what are you thinking about him? I mean, it's one of the most recent topics that's happened in Sixers community.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sure seems like he's still worthy of being on an NBA team. Friend of the podcast, Paul Hudrick with Liberty Ballers, did report it's a non-guaranteed contract. So there's no risk on the Sixers end if it just so happens that Green shows up and it turns out his game has drastically declined. But he was getting real playoff minutes last year for the Cleveland Cavaliers. As you said, did recover really quickly, much brisker than expected from that horrific injury that ended his first stint with the Sixers. And look, we know he puts up jumpers, and that remains the bread and butter of his game. I think clearly his mobility has declined, and very much an open question whether he can actually earn minutes on the wing and hold his own there defensively as a two-way player. But we know there are many a connection on the Sixers team, both with guys like Embiid, like Tyrese Maxey, and then of course Nick Nurse. So I think just building that culture and yet another veteran voice in the locker room. I understand where the Sixers are coming from with adding Danny Green. Certainly not in addition that you expect to have a giant impact, but I think to me it is a pretty logical move. I understand fans knowing the team looked a bit weak on the wing and thinking, oh, could they have done something a little splashier, made a more impactful addition? But for me, as an end of the roster sort of player, I think Danny Green's a perfectly sensible pickup, honestly.
Will you see him bringing the ball up the court and running the offense like we did a little bit in the Doc Rivers?
Depends how many injuries there are. Yeah, I think that is something that he added to his game.
Right.
I remember that, the game where the Sixers were down to 7 guys. I think he got heavy minutes as a lead ball handler. Yeah, but no, I mean, I think on the court, like the Sixers need 3-point volume around Joel Embiid. Danny Green, if he's out there, is going to check that box. He's very consistently a 40% shooter from long range, but I think it's obvious like the off-court stuff is a major part of the thinking here. He's a vocal guy, unafraid to speak his mind, and Tyrese Maxey will care about what he has to say. Joel Embiid, the same. And I do think that's meaningful. And I just think it has to be seen in the context of this is the end of the Sixers roster. This is not someone the team is necessarily banking on for, clutch minutes. But again, as a fringe roster sort of guy, I do think Danny Green makes some sense here.
And Tyrese Maxey, you mentioned a couple times, a big fan of this signing. He was quick to hop on Twitter with the Danny Green tweet. Are we calling it tweet still?
Still works for me.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know what the new version would be. So
right.
tweet is good. Yeah.
So tweet. So he was excited. You mentioned Nick Nurse. We saw Nick Nurse kind of getting into the fabric of the Philadelphia sports scene, throwing out the first pitch at the Phillies game, and that is a team playing a doubleheader, facing the Braves. Exciting times for them. He went out with the Craig Kimbrell arm and all that, and we saw him pop up at Eagles camp and whatnot. So, what did you make of him making the rounds a little bit?
Yeah, I was impressed with the invitation. I heard he told the backstory of that on his appearance on Patrick Beverley's podcast. He said, his buddies were kind of nudging him to do that when he threw out the first pitch at a Cubs game, and he delivered this time around, and well done to him. So yeah, he clearly wants to understand the culture a little bit better. But that said, the Sixers, as we'll get into, are not holding camp in the Philly area this year. The team announced yesterday, I believe, that they'll be going to Fort Collins, Colorado, the campus of Colorado State University. And that is very nearly a mile high, 5,000 feet above sea level approximately. And one of the first things that comes to mind for me there is Nick Nurse is going to test the Sixers' conditioning from day one. I think we know that teams often struggle to play in that elevation. And if any guys are out of shape on day one at camp, I imagine that's going to be exposed. So I think that's an interesting choice from the Sixers. And yeah, I'm curious to see how that pans out as a training camp location for Nurse his first year here.
Yeah, since you brought it up, what do you make of those type of mental or team bonding type of training camps? We saw Doc Rivers do it, taking the team to South Carolina for training camp. It didn't really turn into much as far as a team bonding thing or what have you, just merely because it didn't pay off dividends in the long run of how their fortunes fared. But a new coach, new regime, so to speak, with the coaching staff and trying to, make an impression on these guys and kind of separate the wheat from the chaff. What do you make of this move by Nick Nurse?
Yeah, well, last year was definitely a strange one for the Sixers. I think by all accounts, guys did grow closer with the Charleston trip and feel like they connected, on a human level pretty well. And they had a 4-0 preseason and then an 0-3 start to the regular season. So I really don't know what to make of that. But yeah, with Nurse, I think getting away and being in that somewhat isolated environment makes some sense. I think it's going to be very important for him to have guys buy into this philosophy of experimentation and persistent aggression defensively and just, willingness to try new things. So I perfectly understand thinking doing that in Colorado, might be effective for the Sixers. So yeah, we shall see. But boy, I mean, we just know like the core of Nick Nurse defensively is guys have to play really hard and they have to scramble around and blitz and recover. And man, I don't envy these guys having to do that 5,000 feet above sea level. Yeah. Beautiful
practice facility in Camden. Why not just make it so everybody can sleep in their own bed and be there and do it that way? Why not?
I guess that sounds pretty comfortable to me. So maybe make it a little uncomfortable. Yeah. I mean, I think regardless, the essence of the training camp is going to be the same wherever you're doing it. And Colorado appealing to Nick Nurse. So I'm sure we'll get more explanation from him on the rationale behind that. But I have to think that the elevation is a part of that, and just the notion of pushing yourself from the very start of this season being a nice way to start, and just setting that culture of every day you have to give your best effort.
Media Day, October 2nd for the 76ers. They leave and start training camp in Colorado the next day, October 3rd. They're only there for like 4 or 5 days. Is that worth the trip? Should they be staying longer? What'd you make of just the short time frame that they're going to be in Colorado?
Yeah, I mean, you're limited with the NBA's rules and regulations on what you can do. I mean, they definitely have gotten together as a team this offseason. We've seen a bunch of guys in Los Angeles at Rico Hines' runs, new Sixers assistant coach. So I think that's been a convenient setting, and we've seen a bunch of players there. But yeah, I mean, if you choose to go away from for training camp, that is the reality of it. It's not going to be a long-term stay, and it's sort of like a simulation of a short to medium length road trip essentially. So yeah, I mean, I think it's fair enough to think that could pay some dividends. Certainly nothing dramatic, and I think regardless, the impact of a nurse training camp would be similar. But yeah, I think doing it in Colorado. We'll test these guys from the jump.
Some more housekeeping stuff. We can understand the connection with Danny Green, former Sixer, helped them almost reach pinnacles that they haven't reached in quite some time. Played a key role in a lot of aspects, particularly in the locker room. Connection to Nick Nurse. Why bring this young guy, David Duke Jr., into the fold? What does he bring, and what should Sixers fans think of him as more of a training camp body or someone who they might see long-term on the team?
I think definitely the former. So, we've talked before about these Exhibit 10 contracts where basically you sign this deal that can incentivize you to stick with an organization's G League affiliate. So, would not be surprising if David Duke Jr. ends up a Delaware Bluecoat. And the Sixers still have, one offseason roster spot that they could use on, on a similar sort of player. But yeah, he has 45 games NBA experience with the Brooklyn Nets, scored over 20 points per game with Long Island last season. He's an athletic combo guard and still pretty young out of Providence. And I think those type of players who, have already shown a little bit of something at the NBA level and still have theoretical upside are the guys you want to use Exhibit 10 slots on for the most part. So I think that's the logic behind this move. And Javonte Smart, who Sixers fans saw in Summer League, is another guy they have on an Exhibit 10. So yeah, those are players you might see glimpses of in the preseason, but unless there are a ton of unexpected events, they're not going to be Sixers come the regular season.
Hey, we are going to stop and pay some bills here on the Sixers Talk podcast, but we are no one without our sponsors. We, of course, brought to you by Wilmington University. Find your higher education home at Wilmington University, where your academic success is celebrated by a caring community. Explore your opportunities at wilmu.edu. It's time to rush to new rewards at Rivers Casino. Now there's a whole new way for you to earn, redeem, and level up your rewards. Get your new Rush Rewards card and get more out of your game at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Noah and I kind of squeezed all the juice we could out of the end of the summer, and were able to take a little time off and kind of recharge the batteries a bit. And in that time, my boy Noah was soaking in the U.S. Open, got a fresh new U.S. Open hat, I noticed. And the stars were out. There was a lot of attention and eyeballs on Flushing, New York. And what did you enjoy the most out there, Noah? How was it?
It was
how many U.S. Opens is this for you?
I guess this is the third one I've been to, but the first I really went all in. So I did.
What does all in mean?
I mean, I could have gone, I guess, a little more, but yeah, I did one day of the fan week, which is like the qualifying and the practices beforehand,
right? And
then I did the entire first 5 days, from morning till late at night. So yeah,
I don't see any sunburn though. You hung in there pretty well.
The legs are rough, but I was as diligent as I could be, at least with the face and the nose and the major areas. But yeah, no, look, I think just seeing great athletes that up close and appreciating little nuances that you don't on television, broadly speaking, is the best part of it. Whether that's a young up and coming stud or a veteran. So yeah, Guillaume Monfils, I don't know if folks have casual sports fans have heard of him, but he's just this incredible athlete and entertainer. Seeing him was a highlight. Seeing Andy Murray, and yeah, I got to watch Coco Gauff as well, the champs. I watched her quarterfinal win. So yeah, cannot endorse it strongly enough, and it was a pretty awesome experience.
Did you practice your Ben Shelton phone hang up? Did you get that in there?
I don't think I can, convincingly replicate that, but yeah, that seems to be catching on a little bit. Novak, Djokovic kind of threw it back in his face. Right. So yeah, I did get to watch Shelton, and yeah, he can bomb that serve, and obviously is an awesome young American talent. So that was another fun part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the most impressive things of all of athletics that I've seen in person are a serve by a professional tennis player and a slap shot in person. Those are two of the
Hmm.
things that just like made my jaw like man, I wouldn't want to be on the other side of trying to stop that, slow it down, return it,
Yeah, I
whatever.
think it's
So
the essence of like put me in those shoes and I would have zero chance. I think other parts, of professional sports, you can maybe convince yourself. You can maybe say, oh sure, if a guy grooved a fastball down the middle, I could square that bad boy up.
right.
But I'm not returning a 149-mile-per-hour lefty Ben Shelton serve. That's just not happening in any lifetime. Yeah.
Also, in the waning moments of the summer before Labor Day, or I guess after Labor Day too, of course, we saw Team USA go down against Germany in the World Cup tournament, and which prompted apparently LeBron James to kind of get on the bat phone and round up all these NBA guys and say we're coming to the 2020 World Olympics. As if we didn't already expect that, you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? But I wish Tyrese Maxey had been a part of that
I was
group.
thinking. I
Yeah,
was thinking of that conversation we had a little more. Like watching them, I think he
he
could have
would be the
helped.
type of player. I
Yeah,
know, man. He
like I know Austin Reeves
speed.
was productive offensively, but he did get picked on a good amount defensively. And yeah, I think Maxey would have had a shot to help the United States, who they lost a tight game and then didn't even come home with a medal. Got
Right.
edged out by Canada in that bronze medal game, but a 1-6er performed pretty well in Filip Petrushev for Serbia, who ended up coming runner-up to Germany. I was a little bit surprised to see him getting like crunch time minutes in those high stakes moments. So that
Nice.
impressed me a little. And
Hmm.
I know I've expressed some skepticism about like does he have the necessary qualities to help as an NBA five, but at least on the international stage, like he did some good work for his country, and I think that for me that adds a little bit of intrigue. Like okay, this guy was playing in the gold medal game. Let's see what he does at training camp. When he's going up against Joel Embiid, and let's see, what he can do at the NBA level.
You mentioned the big fella, and he and his MVP status was throwing his weight around in Josh Harris's owner's booth over at the Commanders uh, football game. They won. I forgot who they played, but the Commanders won. He was there with Kevin Durant, all chummy with his Sesame Street Vans on. I don't know if you saw those, which is a pretty cool item. But he's an interesting guy, of course. Should Sixers fans feel any type of way in the Josh Harris way of doing business, where he's out here buying franchises and bringing players along? Michael Rubin's there. I guess it's just the way, par for the course these days, huh?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, as we've talked about before, probably not ideal as far as appealing to the Philly fan base to own the Washington squad or
Right. Iverson, as a Cowboys fan, was like, I think as far as anybody was willing to take it, because they still gave him guff about it, but it was kind of like an accepted thing.
right. And Tyrese Maxey, I think, has been cautious about hiding those allegiances. But yeah, obviously Josh Harris has a very high powered role and has decided to invest in these rivals of Philly sports teams. I think the bottom line, of course, is it doesn't really have a huge impact on how he runs the Sixers. And I think, as we've talked about a bunch before, there are valid criticisms in looking at his history as Sixers owner, but just the fact that he owns another NFL franchise and they happen to be in the same division as the Eagles, I'm not personally inclined to rip the guy for it, but totally fair game. And I know a lot of that disdain is prevalent among the fan base.
Kind of like Devontae Smith and like his Celtics fandom, that type of thing. The Eagles got. Remember, he was getting the jersey signed by Jason Tatum and all that.
Is that Devontae?
Was that him? Who am I thinking of? It was the Birds receiver. I thought it was Devontae Smith.
Devontae. Okay.
Yeah. So he came to the game and was all wrapped up in the Celtics. But
yeah. I mean, the MVP decided to show up. I believe before he's expressed allegiance to the Packers. I feel like I've seen some "Go Pack Go" tweets from Joel Embiid, but he was checking out the scene with the Commanders, and yeah, I guess the bottom line is Eagles and Commanders are even at 1-0 for the time being.
yeah, Joel Embiid, an enigma wrapped inside a riddle. But speaking of Josh Harris, he has been on record, quoted by ESPN in that Ramona Shelburne piece. I think that was when he went into the booth and was talking with who was it? Troy Aikman and Joe Buck. There we go. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that. And that weird handshake situation.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
And he was in that instance, he mentioned the fact that um, the Harden situation is unfortunate, but we have to keep our eye on the big picture, blah, 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 which is that we're still a contending team, and most teams in the NBA would change places with us in 5 minutes. Okay. So Brad Botkin from CBS decided to write a little think piece on that. So I'll synopsize it for everyone. And he said, you know what? I've decided to look deeper and decide what my perception of his comment that would all these other 29 NBA teams really decide to trade places with the Sixers as they're currently constructed in their current situation. He deduced that 8 of 21 teams were a yes, that they would trade places with the Sixers. And then there were some other maybes. So he conceded that maybe if those maybes became yeses because he was on the fence with them, maybe that'd be 12 of 21 teams that would trade places with the 76ers. What he really used as a measuring stick was their current star status, what their draft pick situation was, the James Harden stuff, if Joel Embiid were to opt out in the future because of how this Harden thing may deteriorate and how the Sixers might continue to fall further down the pecking order of elite teams, that he might opt out soon or ask to be traded soon. So those are some of the things that he used as determining factors. I think he missed the boat on the amount of regular season wins that they've racked up, because they've done a lot of winning, man. And as far as trading places with teams and season tickets, that's going to determine a lot of the fan base. And something he also didn't take into account is, you know, I would imagine NBA players are rather playing Philly than Charlotte, or Philly than, you know, maybe OKC, or, you know, some of those places. So I feel like that's a factor, as well as, you know, the new arena and things like that. I think he didn't take into account. But I think he does have a good point as far as how the Sixers perceive themselves, maybe how they're perceived in the larger NBA. And yes, they are in kind of one of those betwixt and between places where this Harden thing really has them kind of hanging on the edge of a cliff of what the next step is. Do you think there's more validity to Josh Harris's statement that teams would want to trade places with the 76ers, or that this is a situation that is ripe for rotting more than green and growing?
I don't think I go that far, but yeah, no, I think it's valid to not be on the same page as Josh Harris, and it feels a little bit like speaking from the perspective of where the Sixers perhaps were 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, or 4 years ago. I think you don't want to stress too heavily the sour context of, oh, the Sixers have these multiple devastating second round losses, and you do want to focus on the present situation. But I think all that matters in assessing where they are now. And I think you just look at some of the ways they've wasted what they had, and it's fair enough to have some bitterness about the team's current standing. Certainly, as a fan of the Sixers. So, yeah, I mean, I think saying 21 teams are better off, that did feel like a little bit much to me. But I also think you go team by team, and you can say, sure, like, okay, the Timberwolves had less wins than the Sixers, but they have this, ascending star in Anthony Edwards, or, sure, this other franchise isn't currently as successful, but there's more reason for optimism when you look forward. I think, though, if you buy into Tyrese Maxey as a future all-star player, then it's easier to make the case that the Sixers have a somewhat enviable position. And of course, I think a lot of it just hinges on, like, how much do you believe Joel Embiid will stay this great for the next 3, 4, or 5 years, or how much do you have skepticism about his health? And also, as you brought up, though there's no sign of any imminent concern with him desiring to leave, if you're pessimistic on the notion that he'll be a lifelong Sixer, then the Sixers are perhaps not in as great a place as Josh Harris and Daryl Morey want to tell us. So, yeah, I think fans are just tired of hearing that point made, and of course, they want to see the end product be better than it has been, and increasingly so. There's, I think, less good reason to feel like next year or 2 years from now is going to be fantastic. As we've talked about, there's some intrigue perhaps with what Daryl Morey has planned for next offseason and this apparent situation where the Sixers are going to have a good amount of cap space to throw at people. But I think for the time being, like any fans who don't believe that's going to mean grand success are sitting from a perfectly reasonable place. I think you got to wait and see what Morey indeed has up his sleeve, and just the fact that like the most important thing with the Sixers right now is the James Harden mess. I think makes it a lot more difficult to take a sunny view of where the team currently sits in this broad sense.
Yeah, it's a tough time to be assessing the team because of the curveball that Harden has thrown them by opting in, requesting the trade, and then coming up with the whole liar thing and all that. It just is a weird time, and it's also a weird time because when you think about it, it's something I neglected to mention earlier when we talked about Team USA is that once Joel Embiid steps on the court to play basketball here in training camp, he might be playing all the way through from this September, October, all the way through until next September, October, because of the Paris Olympics and his choice of what he's going to do with this national team thing, which will definitely shape and I don't know. Tobias Harris's contract is expiring. The Harden thing is coming to a head. You mentioned the money and what they'll have available, and it'll be an interesting next 12 months for this team, for their superstar and Joel Embiid. It's interesting to think about his health and how they will manage it. They also have that playing the in-season tournament that's coming up, and this whole proposal that they're trying to put in place. What is it that you can't sit two stars on the same night, and stars are determined by a player that's made an all-star team in one of the last 3 years and things like that. So it's just a lot going on with the NBA and how the Sixers handle this next 12 months with all that's going on and all that's to come is going to be, we're always talking about how crucial these times and moments and situations are, but as far as in the idea of what the article was touching on, the fact of the enviousness of being the Sixers franchise or not, this franchise can definitely take a lot of steps forward in this next 12 months or could take some steps back.
Agreed. Yeah, no, it's a high stakes period, and yeah, the Harden saga I think looms the largest, but I think outside of the various off-court dramas, really important. Just like, does Tyrese Maxey have yet another leap in him?
It has to. It has to happen. But can that leap happen if the ball's not in his hands on a frequent basis because Harden's the one initiating and playmaking,
Yep. Yeah. I mean, yes, still to be seen. And, can DeAnthony Melton be like a good, reliable NBA starter who the team wants to give an extension? That's a big one. And yeah, and then as you said, next offseason, Morey has been upfront about the flexibility being a priority there, and has already expressed some confidence that the Sixers will be an attractive destination to high-level players with the cap space they're projected to have. So I think we will cross that bridge when we get to it, but no doubt in just like assessing the future of the franchise, that's going to be big. But yeah, first things first, let's get to training camp. Let's see what James Harden has up his sleeve, and then we'll go. Then we'll take the next obstacle whenever it arises.
And that was one of the things from Bakken's article that, if people want to play in Philly or rather than Indiana as free agents, you know what I'm saying? I just feel like the Philly, maybe it not has the cachet of Miami or New York or LA, maybe Chicago, but the reigning MVP being here and his ability to court maybe one or two guys who want to play with him and with Maxey and live in Philly where the fan base is going to be really supportive and passionate. There we
Yeah.
go.
That's a guarantee. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's 6 and one, half dozen the other.
Yeah.
Your thoughts though? Cameroon, France, USA. Where does Joel Embiid fall in that hierarchy? I mean, when you look at the names and the swath of people supposedly, Draymond Green and Devin Booker and Damian Lillard and Steph Curry, all these guys that Anthony Davis, that LeBron is trying to, make sure plays in the Olympics. I mean, they could probably not do without Joel Embiid and be, just fine. But I would assume that would be where he is leaning as far as the Olympics. But what do you think?
I'm not so sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it was last summer that he, did the necessary paperwork to be eligible for the French team, which was notable. And I think France was not very far from beating the United States, the last Olympics. So I think it is strange to envision him sharing the floor with Rudy Gobert and, likely Victor Wembanyama. That's a ton of size and a ton of long-limbed folks out there. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me if Joel Embiid is like drawn to the challenge of trying to beat the LeBron Jameses and Kevin Durant's of the world, and feels some calling to France, but I think for the time being, all indications are like he's genuinely unsure. He hasn't made his mind up, and everyone's waiting and seeing. It's a pretty big deal. The MVP of the league. Where does he kind of choose to play? Of course, it's the Paris Olympics, right? So that's another little box, that playing for France would be able to check, having that, wholehearted support of the home crowd, and that's obviously something Embiid knows. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think he knows.
As the heel in front of the home crowd because he didn't choose.
If he chooses Team USA, like the French folks will, I'm sure, be a bit frustrated because there were some signs pointing to him representing, that country. So I don't think he knows, but honestly, just like a pure gut feel call, it really would not surprise me at all if he does ultimately opt to play for France and has some very entertaining duels with Team USA and, some of these other talented nations like, Team Canada, Slovenia, these other countries that have some high-powered NBA stars that will be present in those Olympics.
As a dad, I'm going to say this. I don't think maybe Arthur does have the dual citizenship, but point being, I just think that as a dad and your son, being born here, and you would kind of want to have that continuity with the family to, represent the country where your son is from. I don't know if he would want to play for a place that he doesn't live or frequent as much as, here stateside. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I just feel like as a dad that might be a determining factor.
Yeah, I mean, there's the language component. There's just the element of having good relationships with guys already on the French team and already having been recruited by them for a while. I know Boris Diaw has been in his ear and of course really wanted Joel Embiid on that squad. So yeah, there's a lot for him to juggle, and I think he is leaving options open for now. So yeah, whenever he makes that decision, it'll be a big deal in the international basketball world.
No, are you putting your bid in to head to Colorado State?
Yeah, we shall see.
Okay.
I would like to be there, but waiting for details on what that might look like. But yeah, I would love to be there. Love to be a mile high and see what Nick Nurse has cooking for that first training camp.
Awesome stuff. Be sure to check out Noah Levick's work on NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com. Follow him at Noah Levick on all social media platforms. My guy, welcome back. Good to see you. Glad you had a good vacation. For Ben Barry and Noah Levick, I'm Danny Pommells. Thank you for listening to the Sixers Talk podcast, brought to you by Wilmington University. WilmU Works. We'll see you next time.